Okay.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to was this our fourth edition of the town hall meetings? So thank you for tuning in to these and trying to figure out which candidate you feel is the proper guy for this position. I am Nathan Tolbert, candidate for Douglas County Commissioner District 5. We have a moderator again for our town hall, as always, Renee Plain of In Plain Sight Marketing. And I'm stealing your lines, Renee, but go ahead. I'll let you give us the format and let us know how this thing's going to work.
Perfect. Thank you. So I am Renee. I'm co-owner of In Plain Sight Marketing, just to ditto what Nathan said. And tonight, the purpose of this event is for you to have an opportunity to get to know Nathan and ask questions, and for him to have the chance to connect with you. We have everyone muted, but we are taking questions in the chat. We are planning on sharing tonight's webinar online. So we are recording it. It's going to be shared on Nathan's website and his social channels. So all you lovely people that are watching can share it with your friends and family who will be voting in this upcoming election. We have received some questions via email, and we also would like to go over a few of the questions from the Good Governance Group's debate from Monday or Tuesday that weren't actually asked. And so we want to go through those tonight, and we have scheduled our time to wrap up at the hour mark. So we will be wrapping up at 7:30 because Nathan respects your time and wants you to have that time with your family. So with that, Nathan, we did get an emailed question that I want to start with, and that is I have yet to watch the GGG debate, but could you tell me what you thought was the highlight of that event?
Well, for me, the highlight was it was pretty evident who had done their homework, who hadn't done their homework. You could tell that some were, they have their opinions and they're sticking to those opinions, and so the votes that I guess they're expecting are the people that have the exact same opinions that they do. That's not my opinion, because I feel like I want to represent the county, the community. So my personal opinions, sure, they may affect me somewhat, but that's not what really matters. What really matters is what are the correct answers, doing the diligence, finding out what the real issues are behind every issue, and trying to come up with the proper solution. So that was something that, as I was sitting back watching and listening to the other answers, that it was evident to me. There was misstatement after misstatement. Things were not called the proper names. That was some of the things that if you have a little bit of background in some of those topics, you can pick those out right away. And so that was interesting to me, that we're so close to the end of the run here, that ballots are even being turned in, and there are still some that hadn't figured out some of the topics or hadn't dialed all that stuff in. So that was probably the biggest thing for me that I took away from it.
Did you have one question that if you could do it over, which one would that be?
Ooh, that I could do it over. No, not really, because I am who I am. I feel I've done the research that I've done. And if I haven't done the research, then I tell you, I don't know the answer to that yet. I'm going to have to look into it, and I will look into it. So no, I answered honestly, and I don't think there was anything in there that I would have redone. I know in the first debate, there were some things that I wish I would have remembered to say, but you can't be perfect in any of these things. And it is, a little bit odd to be, in a silent room with, the other guys just staring at you, no audience. So, you kind of got to give yourself a break on how you deliver on some of those things. So I feel like the forum went better. And so, yeah, no, I don't think I would have changed any of my answers or rephrased much.
Well, good. Well, with that, let's get into a couple of the questions that they didn't ask, and one that you really a couple that you wanted to reiterate on tonight. So if elected, what policies will you seek to change and why?
Okay, well, there are a few policies that I would like to address. One of them, and probably one of the most important things well, maybe not the most important, but in my opinion, one of the big deals is Title 20. That's what gets so much. Everybody wants growth, no growth. We're doing this, we're doing that. And the Title 20 code itself, they are in the process as a staff of going back through and editing and trying to get rid of some of the cross references that counter each other. So there are, in one section it says you can do this, and the other section says that that's not allowed. So that would be a great thing to be able to get Title 20 rewritten, revised, edited, corrected, so that the staff can now work inside of that document, because right now they're not. They're doing something one day, and then the next day something might be changed, or they find out something else and come back to somebody and go, well, we know we told you this, but now we've got that too, which really puts staff in the bad position, and they need to be able to do that. So along the same line, I'd also like to maybe address how issues are presented to the board. It always seems like, and that's one of the big complaints, is that the staff is always presenting for the applicant, when really staff is supposed to be presenting the facts of the case. And it's, so I'd like to see an independent counter be able to present just like the applicant is allowed and the county is allowed. But if anybody's in opposition, they only get their 3-minute public comment, and they're not allowed to expand or answer questions or any of those kinds of things. So I'm not sure how that mechanism would work, but I'd like to be able to have a third party who would present the counter to the same issues that are presented. And I mean, we do it in our sample ballots. There's a pro and a con. So definitely there's got to be a way to get that done. It would just be who does it, how do you assign that? Maybe it's still staff, and maybe a staff member is assigned to identify all the potential holes in the development. I'm not sure how that would come together, but I definitely feel like that is something, because again, it puts staff in a compromised situation, because I don't feel the public should be coming after the staff for doing their job. And it seems to happen over and over and over again. So that would be the one. Then the other thing is I'd like to see, and I guess I'm still hanging in Title 20, is some kind of a modification to the Title 20 code that allows for a developer to develop some kind of affordable housing where they can defer costs. They could be, maybe some costs can be waived, something like that, that allows a developer to produce a project that they can build in an efficient manner without all of the overhead, or maybe just deferments, something like that. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe if they can do a deed restriction, then they're allowed to defer their hookups until the time of the C of O, something like that, that allows them not to have to put out so much money up front. Because right now we're really chasing development away. It's part of the reason why we don't have developments that are affordable. We only have higher end developments right now, get you short of a few, but they have density. And so that's a big deal. We have to find a way to encourage a developer to come to Douglas County and provide housing that can be built in an affordable method. Now, that we realize, it's going to be market value. So the only way not the only way, it's going to be a slow fix. It's not something we can fix tomorrow. So we've got to work within the market, and hopefully we can keep that baseline down and have more infrastructure, more availability, inventory of lots. So that would be the other mechanism I'd like to modify.
All righty. The next question that you wanted to dig a little bit deeper into was, what issues concern you most about Douglas County?
Well, there's a lot of things that are going on. I mean, the one thing is that we are so divided, and it just drives me crazy that you either have to be on one side or the other. I'm either on the side of saying no and no growth and no anything, or I'm against the people that are against growth. And the reality is in the middle, and it always is in the middle. But it doesn't seem like anybody wants to do that. Nobody's willing to take that one step forward. And so that's one of the things that I feel like I'm good at is finding that common ground. I have that ability to talk to anyone, and I relate to a huge cross section. because I've worked on both sides of the counter. I've coached, I've done all these different things that give me a knowledge base in various applications that I can speak intelligently with people of various different backgrounds. So that's one of the things that really concerns me. And then the big one is the recovery. We've got to get Douglas County open. We have to get our economy going again, but it's gonna be, I fear it's gonna be a slow recovery. It's a slow opening, and part of that is not so much getting the businesses open, but getting the people to go to the businesses, because there's so much fear out there. There's so much, well, I don't want to, I don't want to contract it. So we need to do a really good job of making the public feel safe. And then we need to work together and find ways to get people to come out and come to Douglas County, because tourism is our number one. We all know that. So how are we going to get people to come to Douglas County and feel safe in Douglas County? Thankfully, we have a lot of outdoor recreation, which is an easy one to stay distanced. But we need to be able to get people to stay in the hotels. We need to get those rooms filled so that we can get that occupancy taxes going and get our sales going, because we do really rely on that transient population that's coming through. So that would be the big one I fear now, is getting everything open and people feeling safe and comfortable to come to Douglas County and vacation again and get out. I mean, thankfully, I would like to think that a lot of people want to get out of their cities and out of their homes because they've been cooped up for so long. And what better place than to come to Tahoe? I mean, that's a resource we got to leverage. So was my response to that.
Oh, I agree with you. Tahoe has always been my happy spot. So I definitely want people to keep coming. The next question, I don't think this one was asked on Tuesday. All candidates have stated they want to keep Douglas County rural. How do you plan to do this, and what does rural mean to you?
Well, I'm going to answer that second one first, because that's kind of the basis. Rural is a matter of perspective. I think of when I was a kid and I was raised on a 15, 20 acre farm where we had cows, chickens, pigs, horse, and we moved from one side of Lockford to the other side of Lodi to a 2.5 acre parcel. And our neighbors had moved on, and they were saying, yeah, we moved out of Stockton and we're moved out here to the country. And my dad laughed at him and said, no, this is the city. We moved from the country to the town. And it was just two different perspectives of what rural is. And I think that some people have a different perspective, of the county and what rural is. So to me, that rural character is the pace. It's the open corridor, the view corridor that we have. It's the fact that you see the hay trucks, you smell the hay. That's that rural character. But are we really rural? We're on the cusp of crossing over the census requirement to being urban. So, is rural really more like Smith Valley, and we're not so rural? So that's part of the reason why I always say, we have rural character here, because I'm not sure that we are exactly a rural community anymore. So that's exactly the rub too, which rolls right into the rest of that question. How do you keep it rural? Well, part of that is recognizing that the ranchers are the guys that are keeping us rural. They're the ones preserving that open land through the valley that we all are so proud of. But we seem to forget that it's not open land, it is owned land. And we have to support the ranching community. It's a hard job, and there are ranchers that are shutting down and failing all the time because it's not, a high producing, what do you call it, endeavor anymore, or occupation. So a lot of times, when somebody passes, in order to inherit, they're having to sell them off. So we have to re-implement that TDR program so that the ranchers can sell their development rights and conserve their ranch lands. That works double, because we need the ranchers to continue to ranch. We need them to irrigate. We need them to flood irrigate, because that replenishes the aquifer. It's just a big cycle. So, I'm kind of going long on this answer, but how do you support the ranchers? I went to my friends that are ranchers and said, we always say that. Oh, I'm support ranch. I support agriculture. And, I've answered this before. How do you do it? I've asked them, how do I, as a regular person, support you as a rancher? And it has always been respect. Just give the ranchers the respect they deserve. It's their home. It is not a park. They're driving slow vehicles. Give them room, smile and wave. Give them that respect, and don't just take it for granted that they're going to keep the valley green for you, because if the ranchers go under, we don't have a green valley anymore. So it's a big deal. So that's my long answer to that question.
Just a little bit over.
It's a little. I hit 2 minutes and I saw it.
Just for anybody who's watching and noticed, Nathan keeps track of his time on his questions to make sure that, one, we can get to all of the questions, and two, to stay in the zone. So the next question for you, next 2-minute question. There is a backlog in the thousands of already approved but unbuilt units in Douglas County. Should this be a consideration for future master plan amendments? If so, why? And if not, why?
So yes, the answer is yes, it should be considered. And I believe it usually is considered because it's part of the findings that each application has to make findings that are required, that are, are they adversely affecting and the need for what they're doing and these things. So they have to produce and write these findings. And then that's pretty much what the board actually votes on, is whether or not the developer or whoever puts it forward is meeting those findings. So that is already a consideration as far as I'm concerned. But then, there is this backlog. I mean, that's a, I feel like that's partially a fallacy. And thankfully, there was a presentation made to the Planning Commission this week. So go back and watch that and start to see that this so-called backlog is, a lot of them are paper lots that were never actually built. There is not that many turnkey, ready to, what do they call it, shovel ready. There's not that many shovel ready lots that somebody could come in and just build on tomorrow. I can't remember the number now, and I hate quoting numbers because you get it wrong and people come after you for that. But there is not that many lots that are available to build on. There are several like infill lots that are out there, but they're not something that a builder could come in, buy, and build a spec house on, because the lot values are so high right now. There's, some of these lots that are left inside some of these subdivisions are really expensive. I know there's one in Rocky Terrace. I believe it's for, let's see, here's the number again, somewhere around $320,000 for that lot. And if you're going to buy a house for $320,000, that's just the lot. So your interest and everything else on top of that. And then to build a house that's going to be complementing that, you're going to be $400,000 easy into that. So you're going to be close to $1 million home on that. And that's just not something that a lot of builders are willing to risk. They're going to be putting out $700,000 plus interest. So say $800,000 to get back $200,000. That's a huge risk for a small reward or small return. So that's one of those things about the backlog, is that that's not a real number. It's not a real thing. There's lots of reasons why those lots that are sitting out there haven't been built on. So that would be my first question, is why are those backlog lots out there?
Next one is, I'm sure it was asked, but I think it's a good one to go over again. COVID-19 may have or has caused a decrease in revenue. If you are elected, how will you handle a decrease in revenue in the budget process?
That was a reasonable question. But first and foremost, people need to understand that the current board is going to decide on the budget in June. That will be, and it has to be balanced at that time. So I am not going to have the opportunity to even look, should I be elected, at this budget and have any vote or any say in what's going on in that. So I want to let people know that right away, that this is not something that any of the candidates, except for the incumbents, have any say in at the moment. that being said, I have always been a proponent of the zero-based budget. And what that is where everybody starts out at zero, and then each department comes in and says, okay, my number one priority is X, and then Y, and then Z, and then you build and you justify all of your spending, and that is where we're going to have to start. But there's also a lot of things coming in. The county managers already came out with a 39% revenue reduction. So the departments are already working on how they're going to reduce their budgets. So that's something that's already starting. But yeah, I definitely feel like we have to start out with that zero-based budget, and then you have to look at every individual priority. And we are all going to have to tighten our belts. I mean, that's public and private. If this thing keeps going and we're not able to get back to work and we're not able to draw the tourists here, we're going to have to work together. And that is everybody. That is the young, the old, the working, the retired, the public employees, the private sector employees. We are all going to have to tighten our belts and work together to get through this. And we can. We did it in the 2008. It's happened before. We've come through it. And so I'm very confident that we're going to be able to do that. Plus Douglas County, we're kind of blessed. We are actually in a good place. We've had budget, oh shoot, now I lost the term for it. Oh man, right in the middle there, I failed. But we've had extra money that we're able to dip into, that they've been able to save over the last several budget cycles. So we haven't really been hit as hard as other areas. So that is one of the things people need to recognize too, is that we are actually in a pretty good place being in Douglas County with the representation we've had so far.
So then I guess the follow-up question is, when you get into the budget process, and I know we've talked about this in other town halls, but when you get into the budget process as an elected official, how do you feel that should be handled? Going through the budget for the year.
Well, you have to communicate. That's going to be the big thing, because nobody's going to be happy, because nobody's going to get everything they want. And I spoke to one of the previous commissioners today, and he said he knew he'd found the right spot because everybody was calling him upset with him. And he said, that means I'm in the right spot because nobody's happy. So I got to be right about the middle. So I saw the humor in that, but it's reality too. We are all going to have to work and give a little bit in order to make this work. So how do you best do that is you've got to communicate. And part of communicating is listening. Everybody thinks they know everything, or they have the great idea, and they might have the great idea, but you have to listen to the other side and really try to apply it. And I feel that that is one of my strengths, is that I am really able to put myself on the other side and try to and feel what those people are presenting and see the value in that, besides just my own interpretation or my own opinion on where that is.
Excellent. Before I move on, this will be the last question from the Good Governance Group's debate that happened on Tuesday that we wanted to go over. I do have a few questions from chat and one that came in from your website, but I do want to remind anyone watching to please put your questions in the chat box so I can share them with Nathan and you can get the answers that you're looking for. So the last question from the debate on Tuesday: should code enforcement regulations be enforced or eliminated in Douglas County?
So that was a new question for me when that came up. So I did get a little bit of research about that, and I guess what the real issue that they were trying to get to with that question was, should code enforcement stay with community development where it is now, or should it be taken over by the sheriff? And so I've talked to members of both groups now and found out more. They were able to get back to me, and that didn't happen before the debate, but now afterwards I've got some more information on that. So the argument for it staying with community development is they are the keepers of the code. They're the ones that write the Title 20 code, and most of the code enforcement comes out of the planning code. That's building heights, getting permits, allowed uses, things like that. Those are all pretty much governed and understood by the planning personnel. Now, the flip side of that is like the lady that was the code enforcement officer that quit. She got in a situation where the people were belligerent. It was I believe it was a vacation rental issue, and they got into somewhat of an altercation. The guy spit on her, and she was like, you know what, I don't need this, and so she quit. And at that point, you know, someone with a badge could handle that situation better. So it comes back to my magic word, communication. So what I feel we need to do is that it probably should stay with community development, because right now it's complaint driven. They can take in the complaints and they have the answers to what the code is for that certain situation. And then they need to communicate with the sheriff's office of, hey, we have a complaint at X address. And the sheriff's office, you know, say it's a meth lab. Sheriff's office might go, yep, we know about that and we're monitoring that, and so we're trying to do, you know, whatever, we've got that staked out or whatever, and keep our code enforcement person from going and knocking on the door to a potentially dangerous situation. So how do we do that? Well, everything is address or parcel number driven. We need to get our GIS system, which basically combines our databases based on our addresses and parcel numbers. And that way everybody has access, everybody knows what's going on. We know if there's many cases there. We would also know if there is an outstanding incident, say the sheriff has something going on at a certain address that they've had multiple violations or something like that that are out that haven't been paid. Well, when something comes into the planning department for, say, a building permit for who knows what, then they would know that there are fees out here and these guys can't move forward. So those are kinds of things that would be communication back and forth. So that's really where it needs to grow, is that, yes, maybe I feel like it probably should stay with code enforcement, but with good communication with our sheriff. When there are situations like our code enforcement officer ran into, they would have the backup and the support of the sheriff's office. And then we're not creating more sheriff requirements that they would need to have additional staffing or something like that just to handle code enforcement that's being handled by the community development now.
So so I think that question tailors nicely into one that came from your website. Hi, Nathan. My husband and I live in Glenbrook, Douglas County. We have felt our neighborhood to be very negatively impacted by the proliferation of short-term rentals and online rental agencies. What is your view on this issue? Do you have any plans to address it? We would be very interested in hearing your ideas.
So yeah, that actually dovetails perfectly into that. So right now there is an ordinance. It's was it Title 2622? I'm going to throw that number out there because I actually know that one's a real one. And so in that, VRBs, which are vacation rentals, like Airbnb. So if somebody is going to use their property as a vacation rental, which they have the right to do, they need to register that property as a vacation rental, and they have to go through an application process, because basically you're turning a residential unit into a commercial unit because you're now allowing the public to come into your personal residence. So there are inspections required, things like that. Now we get our system up where they communicate. If we have a noise call, which the sheriff would respond to, they would also know that, hey, this is a VRB, and they would also know that they're probably going to be running into a potential situation. So that is where we really need to improve, because I absolutely empathize with the person that's lived in their house for 20 years and then now right across the street is a vacation rental that says that they have 10 occupants. And so any day of the week, they could have 10 or more people hanging out and having a party or whatever, and, you know, potentially disturbing the peace or disturbing their peace. Getting this vacation rental ordinance tied down and nailed down for not only the Tahoe Township, but all of Douglas County, and then having the communication and the work together between the sheriff's office and code enforcement should limit that. There's lots more issues because nobody wants to rat on their neighbors. You want to remain a good neighbor because as soon as you do, that's the end of a relationship. There's all kinds of things that go back and forth in that. But people have the right to do what they want to do with their property. So you can't really take that away from them. That's not the way we do things in America. But we do need to protect the rights of the adjacent owners just as well. So right now, enhancing that or increasing the effectiveness of that code is really, I think, at the moment where we should push. And I am absolutely open to anyone else having more input on that, because I feel like I'm just scratching the surface on that topic of finding out, what people are really encountering and what's going on. So I totally invite you to send me more information. If you've had experiences, share them, so that I can be better informed on that topic. Because now that I know it's out there, I'm eager to learn more information about it.
This is another one from your website. I can't determine your position on taxes growth, and so would like a straight, direct, no BS answer to this question, please. That's the question. They would like a straight, direct, no BS answer to what your position on taxes and growth are.
Oh, okay. So my position on taxes is I would like no more taxes. I one of the few that is not signed and don't plan to sign the tax pledge, and that is only because my entire position is that I will not make blanket promises because I don't know what tomorrow will bring. And so if I made a promise that I would absolutely not raise any taxes, then I could be put in a situation where there's an obvious need, and then I couldn't vote for it because I've already pledged that I wouldn't. And that actually happened to our commissioners with that increase in the 911 tax that they were looking at, that would actually feel that need, that they needed more personnel and dispatch. But thankfully the board went against the pledge, and they did pass the increase. They did get everything taken care of that they needed to. But then you come under fire. It's like, wait, you said you wouldn't. It's like, it was an obvious, common sense answer that we would do this to make that happen. So that's something that I will just not going to do. I'm not going to tell you I'm absolutely going to do one thing or another, because the situation needs to be addressed on a case-by-case basis and weigh the merits and the faults of each issue and come up with a proper solution. And if you are just going to say, I'm against this, then you will never open your eyes and you will never listen to what the other side has to say. So that's not me. I'm the guy that's going to listen, and I'm going to do my best to find the proper answer. What was the other half? That was taxes.
Growth.
Growth. Yes. So I work in the construction industry, so I know that a lot of people are like, well, he's pro-growth, he's pro-growth. They even said that in the GGG forum, is the guy's like, well, I see 3 guys that are for growth and 3 guys that are against growth. And I would say that I am not for growth. I am for proper growth. I'm for growth that makes sense. I'm for growth that is going to fit the needs of Douglas County. We must grow. We're going to grow. There is no way that we can survive if we don't grow. Our tax base is based on an increase in the values of real property being houses, improvements. So you have to understand the tax base. When a house is built, the assessor's office goes through and appraises that house on the replacement cost of that house. And then it's depreciated 1.5% per year based on that value that it would be to replace it. So everybody's value is dropping 1.5% per year. And then it's reappraised at least once every 5 years. It's required by law to be reappraised. And they may raise that replacement cost, but then it goes back and gets depreciated 1.5% per year of the age, all the way up to 75%. So you have once a house reaches 50 years in age, it's depreciated 75% of the replacement cost. That's not the sales cost. That's how much it would cost you to rebuild that house stick by stick, brick by brick. So if we don't have new construction and new improvements to continue to expand our tax base, we run out of tax dollars. And what does that mean? That means your taxes go up. So without growth, we cannot sustain our tax base. So you have to have it. Now, does that mean I want condos out through our view corridor? No, of course not. That is not, that defeats the purpose and defeats the character of Douglas County. We all agree we want to keep that. But part of keeping us rural is growing the right way and managing the infrastructure and doing it right. And part of doing it right is having a view on the future and how is it going to affect the future. And that is where I feel like we've, in the past years, and not just this current, I'm not even talking about the current group of commissioners, but you back up 20 years ago, 30 years ago, when these developments were coming in, we'd take them in and did not have any plan for maintaining the streets because they were brand new streets. And it was just put off to the future. Well, the future's here and we can't do that anymore. So that's my take on growth.
So this next question also came in through your website, and it's an interesting one. I'm going to read it. It's a little bit long. In 15 to 20 years, when your children have settled down and you're a grandfather, how are you going to respond when they negatively comment on their current overcrowded conditions, housing, roads, recreation areas, etc., and yearn for the conditions of their younger days? Most of us do anyway. Quote, "Dad, how did this area become such a mess? Can't something be done? It's just not fun anymore." The person who sent this said, "I'm entering my twilight years, so whatever happens will have minimal effect on my lifestyle. However, I do have children and grandchildren that are living in this valley, and it's their lives he's concerned, or he or she is concerned about." So I think the question here is, how are you going to respond when they negatively comment on their current overcrowded conditions and yearn for the conditions of their younger days?
Well, you kind of said it there. We already can say that. I was digging through pictures, trying to find stuff to use throughout the campaign, and ran across a picture of when we first moved here. And our lot was out here in Johnson Lane that my parents bought and were building on. And we woke up one morning and there was a herd of wild horses in our backyard. And so that's right over there on Hot Springs Mountain below the water tower. And when's the last time we saw wild horses out over in this area? So you're always going to have fonder memories of that. And like I said, growth is going to happen. So the only way that we can do that to keep that situation from happening is to do it the right way. And we have to be conscious of change and how to continue to evolve and present projects and address projects in our attempt to forecast the future and how they're going to affect that. Now, can we ever do that 100% correct? No, you never really know what's going to happen in the future, and hindsight's easy. But we have to be able to try and predict what some of these outcomes are going to be. And so how do you answer that is, is like, hey, we did our best. And, how could we have known that Google and Amazon was going to come around and there wouldn't be a need for the big box stores like we had, because you could buy everything online now, it's delivered to you. How do we know what that's going to look like in 30 years? Well, we don't, but we can do our best given the information we have today to try to predict it. And then remember that things change and we create a mechanism to make those changes. That's one of the things about people say with the master plan is, you got to stick to the master plan. Well, we'll stick to the master plan unless something comes up that is a viable issue that needs to be addressed. And, part of that was like with the development of the North End. They realized they didn't need all the general commercial because nobody's filling in those retail spots anymore, because unless you are a large retailer like Target, Walmart, those guys, there's not a need for all of that big space. So they changed, what they're doing in that development to better accommodate what today looks like. So those are the kinds of things we're going to need to do. So, you can never appease everybody at once. And, we're always going to look to the past and remember it fonder. Douglas High School, my class was a lot smaller than the class is now. And, and a lot of those people are now coming back because they want to come back to a place like Douglas County where we still smile, we still wave at you. And those are the kinds of things that we can work on individually to keep our rural character.
So this question came in via chat. What would your vote have been on the recent RDA2 agenda items from the meeting 2 weeks ago? What supporting comments do you have about that vote if you had been able to make it?
Well, first and foremost, I was not part of that vote. So when those issues come up before me, I'm going to try to work on finding out some of the reality. And I'm still doing that. I just today found out some more information about how that TOT taxes work. And, it's not just, everybody's like, well, that TOT tax is just going back into the lake, was taken from the lake. Well, that's not the truth. That TOT tax goes to transportation, it goes to roads, it goes to the Parks Department. So it helps support a lot of our parks programs, and that money comes back into the general fund, and it comes from the valley and the lake. So that the whole thing of Event Center RDA2 is that we have to acknowledge that gaming is not the way of the future. Gaming may never recover. We see it now. People may never want to come back and gamble the way they did. So we're going to have more businesses like maybe COD, where it targets the locals, because some people move here so they can gamble. And then, Carson Valley Inn, Harris, Harvey's, Hard Rock, those guys are still going to, because there's always going to be that element that the gambling serves, but we're going to have to leverage the lake. We all use Lake Tahoe as a reference, and I fall back to that. The farther away from this area you get, you start to say you're from Lake Tahoe, because if you say you're from Nevada, they go, oh, Vegas. So you're like, no, we're way, don't insult me. I'm not from Vegas. So we say Lake Tahoe because people also know where Lake Tahoe is. So everybody already uses that and recognizes that Tahoe is something that's well known and an asset for Douglas County. So the people that are up there and live there and work there, run the casinos, they know, their business. They understand what they need. So why wouldn't we support what they say that they need? I would support that. Now the X's and O's of how all this stuff, that's how it's going together. I want to make sure that the taxpayers are protected. But there's also, it's a give and take. Every time I talk about this, I try to share what I've learned, and some people have just made up their mind that what I'm saying is not right, and it's not going to be, it's going to be this, we're giving away $100 million or whatever. That's not the case. It's just not the case. But people pick and choose what they want to believe. So I am in favor of promoting Tahoe. Event Center is the solution that we have. Nobody else has another solution, and I'm not going to say a better solution. I haven't heard another solution proposed. So the Event Center is the one that we have. So I am for pushing forward with that situation. We could get into the weeds of all the arguments, but in general terms, I am for promoting Tahoe. I'm for it becoming an outdoor recreation. I'm for tourism coming. I'm for filling up our hotels, because that is our industry. That's where we are headed. And if we could come up with something better, let's get business minded. Let's get more businesses in here. But if we do that, then we're going to push away our rural character. So everything is a give and take. And I just don't feel like, people are wanting to face the reality that we have to do something different. And you can't just say no. You can't just stop, because the world doesn't stop, and Douglas County can't stop either.
You know, this is an interesting question that just came through chat, and I think it's a perfect follow-up. Many of these questions make it seem like you have to pick your poison. You either raise taxes or you encourage smart growth. What would you choose between these two options?
Well, I would encourage smart growth because we have people in Douglas County right now that struggle to afford their homes. They are renting with no chance of buying. And so if we can do it right, we can allow these people to, I shouldn't even say these people because it could very easily be me. I got lucky in knowing the right person at the right time that I was able to buy my first home with my wife. We bought our first home because we knew the right people. It was absolutely nothing to do with our economic stature, any of that stuff. We found the right people at the right time. We took advantage of the Nevada First Time Homebuyers program, and we were able to buy our house. And had we rented through that, we probably would still be renting. So saying these people is a horrible way of phrasing it. But that is reality, is that if we can grow correctly and we can provide a diverse housing market, which we do not have right now, then we cannot drive down the cost of housing, but we can maintain the cost of housing. And hopefully over time, we can, that bottom value home that is available, the economy will catch up to that. And like I said before, it's not a tomorrow fix. It's going to take time. And and the market is what the market is. If we start to change the way our code is written, allow developers to develop more efficiently so that their investment is not so high, so that they can actually produce a product that's not as expensive, you can have both. We can have all of that. So then we share the wealth, and the tax base goes up, and our taxes don't have to go up. So that would absolutely be my choice.
Switching gears just a little bit, this also came in through chat, the next two did. Your opponent's advertising attacks you for not taking positions on some issues. Can you tell us why you think principles are more important than locking in your position on an issue?
Well, and I feel like that's, locking in is irresponsible. If you say I'm for this, that means you're not going to listen to anybody else's point of view. And that is the problem we have. We have people on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence. There's nobody there looking at the fence trying to figure out, do we even need a fence in the first place? And that is what kind of drives me crazy. And part of what motivated me to get started with this in the first place is I have this opinion or I have this opinion, and nobody is thinking about the county. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but it doesn't appear that way. And that was, why I wanted to get started in the first place. Was, the Board of Commissioners is so entrenched on one side or the other that we need to work together. And I feel like I'm the kind of guy that can get people to talk to both, or talk to me, and I'll talk to both sides. It doesn't matter to me. Somehow we've got to start representing the county in the future and not representing our own opinions. So I get hammered for that. Fine. I will take that. I have opinions. This is my fourth town hall where we talk about the issues. So obviously the research isn't being done there. And is that who you want? Or you want the guy that's going out there and finding. And every one time we do this, with topics come up, I continue to talk to people, continue to find more information. I am not afraid to pick up the phone and call somebody who is in a position that has information about a topic. I have no problem calling the code enforcement officer directly saying, hey, I've heard about this, tell me about it. And finding out from the boots on the ground, what is reality. That's the way it goes. I don't feel like it's my job to tell you what's wrong with my opponent. My job is to tell you why I'm the guy to do it. And if, I guess this is where I cross the line, is that if that's what the opposition has to do, is tear me down in order to prove themselves, then I think you have a clear winner in me, because they're having to try to poke holes in what I'm doing. And, that's it feels to me like game over if that's where they're headed.
Well, so then this is the last question I have for tonight. So this will be the last one that we're talking about, and then we can wrap up here. But the last question from chat is, tell us a little about your family and why having a family would make you a better county commissioner.
Huh. All right, so I'll try to do this without getting emotional. So my family,
Emotion is okay.
well, it's so my wife and I, we met in high school actually. We weren't quite high school sweethearts. We were like right after high school sweethearts, I guess. Um, Actually, funny story. We dated once in high school, and she literally ran from the car at the end of the date. Um, I took her to arachnophobia, and apparently she does not like bugs, so that did not go well. And a year later, we went out again, and she gave me a second chance, and been pretty lucky. So we have three boys, all born Carson Tahoe. They've all three through Douglas County School District. So with that, I have been involved in the community through mostly my boys, because that's where the focus is. So I've been, working for the school. I've been teaching there, taking jobs throughout my career, depending on where we were. With, the 2008, I did a couple of different jobs there, finding my way through. I worked for the city until my son was born, and then I had a side job, and then my son and family. So, the full-time job, and so I had to get rid of one thing, and so I decided to get rid of the full-time job at the city and work for myself, and that's allowed me to be way more active in the community than other people have the opportunity to do, because I made my own hours and worked my way through. So that investment, I have been here my entire adult life. I've worked in Douglas County or Carson City or just over the line in Alpine my entire life. I've worked, like I said, in public sector and the private sector. And so I have a lot of connections. Uh, I have experience with government. I have experience with taxes. I feel like I was trained by a lot of great people. Um, Bill Driscoll was one of the first people that I ever worked for, but actually Fran Macias was who I answered to, and she made sure I got jobs done. And so right out of the gate, that was my afternoon job after high school. And then I went to work for the Carson City Assessor's Office, and that experience was a basis for a lot of how I live today. Working at the counter at the Douglas at the Carson City Assessor's Office, nobody comes to that counter happy, because you are taxing them. They're coming in upset, and being able to work through the facts with people. Starting that out at 18 years old, and I did that for 6 years until my son was born, and that was a great basis for life. I still quote, Kit Weaver to my kids sometimes. And it kind of makes me smile to know that kind of experience is what I have and can bring back, and that raising those boys the way I have with my wife together, we've gotten to this point, and now I'm starting to see we got to get to the next step. My oldest is about to come back from college. If he wants to come back to Douglas County, where is he going to live? How's he going to afford to live in Douglas County with that first time entry level job? And there's just not a location that he could afford. And of course, we all started somewhere, and I wouldn't allow him to be one of those guys that's demanding, granite countertops in his first house, because I feel like you got to earn it. And that's kind of some of the things I've instilled in them. But now it's time to pay attention, because there's a lot of people that are in that same situation. And we might have to leave. If our kids can't afford here and they move somewhere else, I know my wife well enough that if they have kids and we have grandkids, we're going to follow those grandkids, which means we leave. And, we like it here. And so I'd love for my kids to be able to come back.
We did get one more question through chat, and it's 7:25, so it'll have to be a short one.
No,
But
wait, yes.
Not that short.
Okay.
What management experience do you have? And do you feel like you need management experience to be a county commissioner?
So, management experience. Um, I have run my own company, so I've had employees. I've been oversight over employees. I have run programs. I was, in charge of the varsity girls basketball coach at Whittel, so I ran that entire program. That was, scheduling. That was budgeting. That was oversight of children. Well, not children; they were high schoolers, but they were children. Sorry, girls, but that's what you were. And then I've also been on different boards through mostly affected, through my kids' lives. So Carson Valley Little League. I ran my own not-for-profit, which was a sports academy where I sat up and ran leagues. I had to budget for it. I actually worked with the Douglas County Parks Department. We ran a youth league through Kale Community Center and the Stewart Indian Center up in Carson. So I've had lots of opportunity to manage. I've also had been exposed to the county. I've been exposed to the public. I have that knowledge base that other people just don't have. When people sit here and say, this is a quiet community. Well, yeah, it is a quiet community, but it's also a very active, vibrant community. If you go just watch the parade that was in Johnson Lane, look at the pictures of that. Tell me that's a quiet community. Yes, we have great views. Go to the Little League games and see how many people are out there being active. Look at how many people are out hiking, walking. We are an active, vibrant community. We are not just a sleepy little town. And so you have to open your eyes to the community. The wine walks. I mean, there's so many examples of our community getting out and active. Go to the community center. Well, not now, but before, and see how many classes are running, how many people are out doing things, pickleball tournaments. I mean, there's just so much that goes on in Douglas County that I would not characterize us as a sleepy little community. So those are the things that I bring, that I understand, and that is what helps me make those decisions. That would help, as a commissioner, is that I understand those things. I understand what the community is, and I have the contacts to be able to hear and listen and ask what the community is truly looking for.
And that's perfect. We've got
I
2
did.
minutes.
Okay.
So if you want to say your, closing thoughts, and then we'll remind people that we have another one next week.
Yes, we do have another one next week. Check out the website. Check out all the previous. I know this is dry, and I apologize. I try to be, normally I'm a funny guy, but when it comes to politics, it's just not. It's just not. It's hard to come across and try to entertain at the same time. But I know it's not really what we're looking for, is to entertain. But I would like to be less dry than this. So I guess what I would like to always end with is the thank yous. The support that continues to come in. I say the same thing. I just can't express how much it means to me to see how many people wave and talk and stop me. Now that the pictures are out on the signs, people stop me in the store. Hey, you're that guy, and why? And I love that, because that means people are interested and they want to know. And that's what I was hoping to inspire, is people getting active, doing their own research, and then electing the person that represents you the best, and then follow up and trust that person. So that's what I guess I'm asking for, is your trust and your faith that I will do what I say I will do. I will research. I will be objective. I will keep my ears open. I will try to remember that my opinion and my knowledge base doesn't mean that I am absolutely right on everything and that the public opinion is wrong. So that's my motivation to keep pushing through with this. I hope that you fill in that bubble next to my name and mail in those ballots. The date is getting closer and closer. Get those in, and hopefully mark the bubble next to Nathan Tolbert.
And with that, we are going to go ahead and wrap for tonight. So we do have another town hall next Thursday, the 21st at 6:30. I'm putting out another challenge. I would love to see more people on these because that means people are paying attention and trying to get the information so they can make an educated vote. For more information about Nathan, you can go to his website, nathantolbertdistrict5.com, and sign up for his emails and tune in next week. And thank you so much. Good night.